Captain Jake Morrison had made this run to New Eden Colony 47 times. The route from Earth to Harvest Moon took 3 weeks through hyperspace, and Jake knew every jump point by heart. His cargo ship, the Prairie Wind, carried everything the colonists needed: medical supplies, farming equipment, and letters from families back on Earth. Jake loved these trips. New Eden was different from the busy worlds closer to Earth. The colonists were farmers, teachers, and families who wanted a simple life among the stars. They grew food, raised children, and built something beautiful on a world covered in golden fields and blue rivers. As the Prairie Wind dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Eden system, Jake expected to see the usual traffic. Colony ships moving between the planet and its 3 moons, farming vessels heading out to the agricultural stations, the weekly passenger liner from Earth bringing new settlers. Instead, Jake saw nothing. His communications officer, a young woman named Lucy, turned to him with worry in her eyes. "Captain, I'm not getting any signals from the colony. The navigation beacons are offline." Jake frowned. New Eden had the most reliable communication system in human space. The colonists were proud of their technology. Something was very wrong. "Take us in closer," Jake ordered. "But keep the shields up." As the Prairie Wind moved toward Harvest Moon, Jake's worst fears became reality. Where New Eden Colony should have been, there was only debris. Twisted metal floated in space where homes once stood. The 3 orbital stations were gone, replaced by expanding clouds of wreckage. Lucy's hand shook as she worked her console. "Captain, I'm reading massive radiation signatures. This looks like orbital bombardment. Multiple ships, heavy weapons." Jake's blood turned cold. New Eden had been home to 2.3 million people, families with children, farmers who had never hurt anyone. All of them were gone. "Start recording everything," Jake said quietly, "and send an emergency message to Earth. Use priority channel 1. The Prairie Wind's sensors painted a horrible picture. The attacks had been systematic and complete. Every building, every farm, every settlement had been targeted. The attackers had made sure nothing survived. Lucy found the colony's emergency beacons floating in the wreckage. The automatic recordings told the story. 4 alien ships had arrived without warning. They demanded the colonists leave immediately, claiming humans had no right to be in Zaphirian space. The colonists tried to explain that they had bought the world legally through the Galactic Council. They showed the proper documents. They offered to negotiate. The alien ships responded by opening fire. Jake listened to the recording of Lisa Carter, the colony administrator. She had been trying to evacuate civilians when the bombardment began. Her last message was simple: "Tell Earth what happened here. Don't let them forget us." The attack had taken 6 hours. The aliens had been thorough. They destroyed the farms, the schools, the hospitals. They hunted down the evacuation ships. When they were finished, they left a message beacon in the wreckage. The message was from Admiral Vex of the Zaphirian Empire. It explained that humans had been warned to stay out of Zaphirian territory. The destruction of New Eden was a legal action under Zaphirian law. Any humans who entered Zaphirian space in the future would face the same fate. Jake stared at the message in disbelief. New Eden was nowhere near Zaphirian territory. The colonists had checked the star charts carefully before settling. The Galactic Council had approved their claim. This wasn't about territory. This was murder. On Earth, General Matt Rodriguez received Jake's emergency message in his office at Strategic Command. The general was a calm man who had served in the Earth Defense Force for 30 years. He had seen wars and disasters. But as he watched the footage from New Eden, his hands began to shake. Rodriguez immediately called an emergency meeting of the Colonial Defense Committee. Within 2 hours, representatives from every human world were connected by hyperspace communication. Senator Kate Williams, who had personally approved New Eden's charter, arrived at the meeting with tears in her eyes. 2.3 million people, she said quietly. Families who just wanted to grow food and raise children. They killed them all. The committee watched Jake's recordings in silence. The evidence was clear. The Zaphirians and their allies had committed genocide against innocent civilians. They had done it deliberately and without mercy. General Rodriguez spoke first. "We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. This is a clear violation of galactic law." Senator Williams shook her head. "The council will talk for months while the killers go free. They'll form committees and write reports. Meanwhile, every human colony is at risk." Around the table, representatives from dozens of human worlds nodded in agreement. Mars wanted immediate military action. The Jupiter colonies offered their entire fleet. Even the peaceful farming worlds of the Outer Rim demanded justice. As news of the massacre spread across human space, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in their history, every human world spoke with one voice. The message was broadcast to every corner of human civilization. On Earth, families gathered around their screens to watch the footage from New Eden. They saw children's toys floating in the vacuum where playgrounds once stood. They saw the remains of schools and hospitals. They saw the complete destruction of everything the colonists had built. In the mining colonies of the asteroid belt, tough workers who had never cared about politics suddenly volunteered for military service. On the research stations near Alpha Centauri, scientists began converting their laboratories to produce weapons. Even the luxury worlds near Earth started rationing resources to support the war effort. Something had awakened in humanity. For 43 years, humans had been peaceful members of the Galactic Council. They had followed the rules, respected alien cultures, and avoided conflict. They had believed that civilization meant talking instead of fighting. But the Zaphirians had made a terrible mistake. They had murdered innocent humans and called it legal. They had shown that talking and following rules meant nothing when facing an enemy without honor. Jake Morrison brought the prairie wind back to Earth, carrying more than just news of the massacre. He carried the dreams and hopes of 2 million murdered colonists. He carried the proof that humanity's faith in galactic civilization had been betrayed. As Jake's ship landed at the spaceport in Geneva, crowds of people waited in silence. They held pictures of the New Eden colonists. They held signs demanding justice, but most importantly, they held a new understanding of what it meant to be human in a galaxy that didn't share their values. The sleeping giant was beginning to wake up, and when it fully opened its eyes, the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Steve Harrison had commanded Earth's combined naval forces for 8 years. He was a careful man who preferred diplomacy to warfare. His fleet of 3,000 ships was designed to protect human trade routes and assist with emergencies. He had never imagined he would need to fight a real war. That changed when President Martinez called him to an emergency meeting at the Global Defense Council. Harrison arrived to find representatives from every major human government, military leaders from across human space, and intelligence officers with grim expressions. "Admiral," the president said, "I'm giving you new orders. Mobilize everything, every ship, every reserve unit, every training vessel. I want the largest fleet in human history ready for combat." Harrison stared at her. "Ma'am, our current active fleet is sufficient for any normal conflict. We don't need to mobilize civilian vessels." Dr. Rachel Murphy, the Defense Council's chief strategist, stepped forward. She had been a university professor before the massacre, teaching logistics and supply chain management. Now she was helping plan the largest military mobilization in galactic history. "Admiral, this isn't a normal conflict," Dr. Murphy said. "The Zaphirians and their allies have made it clear that they consider human civilians to be legitimate targets. Every human colony is now at risk." She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked Zaphirian territory and their allied worlds. Blue dots showed human colonies. The two areas were scattered across hundreds of light years. "We can't protect our colonies with 3,000 ships," Dr. Murphy continued. "We need overwhelming force. We need to make it clear that attacking human civilians will result in complete destruction." Harrison studied the display. "What exactly are you proposing?" Dr. Murphy's answer stunned him. 500,000 ships, every cargo vessel, every passenger liner, every mining ship. We convert them all to military use. Commander Tony Garcia, head of human intelligence, had been monitoring alien communications since the massacre. His reports painted a disturbing Picture of how other species viewed humanity. The aliens think we're weak, Garcia reported. They see us as emotional and undisciplined. The Zaphirians are telling their allies that humans will make angry speeches for a few weeks, then go back to normal. He played intercepted communications from the Zaphirian homeworld. Alien voices dismissed human military capability. They laughed about the emotional breakdown they had seen in human media coverage of the massacre. They think we fight like they do, Garcia explained. In their wars, only the military fights while civilians continue normal life. They can't imagine an entire civilization mobilizing for war. Ambassador Claire Foster had spent the last week at the Galactic Council headquarters, trying to get justice through diplomatic channels. She returned to Earth with devastating news. The Council has decided to investigate, she reported. They've appointed a committee to study the incident. They estimate the investigation will take 18 months. Senator Williams slammed her, hand on the table. 18 months? While the killers walk free and plan their next attack? Ambassador Foster nodded grimly. The Zaphirian representative called our demands emotional hysteria. He said humans need to learn that space is dangerous, and colonists accept risks when they leave Earth. Around the table, the human leaders exchanged looks of cold anger. The galaxy's justice system had failed them. If they wanted justice for New Eden, they would have to take it themselves. Admiral Harrison began to understand the scope of what they were planning. You want to convert civilian ships to warships, but civilians don't know how to fight. They'll learn, Dr. Murphy said simply. And they'll fight harder than any professional soldier because this is personal for them. Within 72 hours, the transformation began. Across human space, governments issued emergency orders. All civilian shipping was suspended. Every cargo vessel, passenger liner, and private yacht was ordered to report to military conversion facilities. The aliens watched these movements with growing confusion. Galactic intelligence services had never seen anything like it. An entire species was mobilizing for total war. Director Ryan Clark of the Terran War Production Board coordinated the conversion effort. Shipyards that normally built luxury cruise ships began installing weapon systems. Factories that made farming equipment switched to producing military hardware. The speed of the transformation shocked alien observers. Within weeks, human trade networks completely disappeared as ships vanished into military yards. Passenger services stopped as every vessel was converted for war use. Captain Amy Davis commanded a converted cargo freighter called the Iron Harvest. She had been hauling grain between agricultural worlds before the massacre. Now her ship bristled with weapons and carried a crew of former merchant marines who had volunteered for military service. We're not soldiers, Captain Davis told her crew during their first military briefing. We're citizens seeking justice for murdered neighbors. That makes us more dangerous than any army. Her crew nodded in agreement. They had all seen the footage. From New Eden, they had all lost friends or family in the massacre. For them, this wasn't about conquest or territory. It was about making sure no other human colony would suffer the same fate. Colonel Nick Johnson led the Rapid Deployment Marines, a new unit created specifically for the war. His volunteers came from every human world. They included farmers, teachers, factory workers, and students. What they lacked in military experience, they made up for in motivation. Every one of these Marines has a personal connection to New Eden, Johnson reported to Admiral Harrison. Some had family there. Others had friends. All of them understand what we're fighting for. Engineer Sam Watson revolutionized the ship conversion process. His modular weapon systems could be installed on any hull within days. His innovations allowed humanity to weaponize everything from luxury yachts to industrial mining vessels. The aliens are used to purpose-built warships, Watson explained. They won't know how to fight against converted civilian vessels using unconventional tactics. As the months passed, the alien coalition watched humanity's transformation with growing alarm. Intelligence reports showed that humans weren't just building a military force. They were creating something unprecedented in galactic history, civilization entirely dedicated to war. Human worlds began rationing food and luxury goods to support the military buildup. Families sent their sons and daughters to join the fleet. Elderly veterans came out of retirement to train new recruits. The Zaphirian ambassador to the Galactic Council maintained that humans were throwing a tantrum that would pass. But private communications between Zaphirian military leaders showed growing concern about human capabilities. After 1 year of preparation, Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Vengeance, and watched the largest military force in all galactic history take formation. 400,000 ships filled the space around Earth's solar system. More were arriving every day. The sight terrified alien observers. No species had ever mobilized so completely or so quickly. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were very different from other civilizations. When humans went to war, everyone went to war. Director Ryan Clark stood in the control center of the largest industrial facility ever built. The Terran War production complex stretched across 3 continents on Earth, coordinating the conversion of human civilization from peaceful commerce to total war. On massive screens around him, Clark watched the transformation in real time. Shipyards on Mars worked around the clock, installing weapons on former cruise ships. The asteroid mining stations had become weapons factories. Even toy manufacturers on the peaceful colony of New Switzerland were producing electronic components for military systems. "How many ships are combat ready?" Clark asked his assistant, a young engineer named Karen Wright. 412,000 as of this morning, Wright replied. "We're converting an average of 2,000 ships per day. At this rate, we'll reach 500,000 within 6 weeks. Clark nodded grimly. 1 year ago, he had been managing civilian shipbuilding projects. Now he was overseeing the largest military mobilization in galactic history. The transformation still amazed him. The aliens had made a fundamental error in judgment. They assumed humans would fight like other species, with professional militaries while civilian life continued. Normally, they couldn't comprehend a civilization where every citizen became part of the war machine. Captain Amy Davis brought her converted freighter, the Iron Harvest, to the front lines of the growing human fleet. Her ship had once carried grain between farming worlds. Now it mounted enough firepower to destroy a city. Davis gathered her crew for their daily briefing. These men and women had been merchant sailors 6 months ago. Now they were warriors preparing for the largest space battle in galactic history. "The aliens still think we're bluffing," Davis told her crew. "Their intelligence reports say humans are too emotional to sustain a long war. They believe we'll get tired and go home." Her weapons officer, a former cargo handler named Bill Murphy, laughed bitterly. "They don't understand us at all. This isn't about emotion. This is about justice." The crew of the Iron Harvest represented something the aliens had never encountered before. They weren't professional soldiers fighting for pay or glory. They were ordinary people who had seen their neighbors murdered and decided to do something about it. Colonel Nick Johnson's rapid deployment Marines trained at facilities across human space. His volunteers came from every human world and every walk of life. They included teachers who wanted to protect their students, farmers who understood what the New Eden colonists had been trying to build, and factory workers who knew how to organize massive projects. "These aren't traditional Marines," Johnson reported to Admiral Harrison. "They're citizens in uniform. They bring skills and perspectives that professional soldiers often lack. The Marines trained not just for combat, but for occupation duties. Their mission would be to dismantle the alien coalition's ability to wage war while documenting evidence of war crimes. They studied alien law, logistics, and industrial capacity. Engineer Sam Watson had become the most important person in human space. His modular weapon systems allowed any ship to become a warship within days. His innovations were spreading across the galaxy as other species studied human conversion techniques. Watson's latest creation was the Universal Combat Module, a standardized weapons package that could be installed on everything from luxury yachts to garbage haulers. The system included missiles, energy weapons, defensive shields, and military communication equipment. "The beauty of the system is its simplicity," Watson explained to a group of shipyard supervisors. "Any mechanic can install it, any crew can operate it. We're not trying to build perfect warships, we're building adequate warships in massive numbers." The psychological effect on the alien coalition was devastating. Intelligence reports showed panic spreading through Zaphirian space as their military planners tried to comprehend human capabilities. The Zaphirians had fought wars against a dozen different species. They understood traditional military thinking, but they had never faced an enemy that could convert its entire economy to military production within months. Commander Tony Garcia's intelligence division monitored alien communications around the clock. The intercepted messages painted a picture of growing desperation among the coalition forces. "They're trying to calculate our maximum fleet size," Garcia reported. "Their analysts keep coming up with numbers they can't believe. Some estimates put our potential fleet at over 1 million ships." The aliens were discovering that humans didn't think like other species. Most civilizations had distinct military and civilian sectors. Humans were proving that the distinction was artificial. Dr. Rachel Murphy coordinated the supply lines that would support the massive human fleet. Her logistics network stretched across hundreds of star systems, ensuring that every ship would have fuel, ammunition, and supplies for extended operations. "We're not just building a fleet," Murphy explained to the Strategic Planning Committee. "We're building the infrastructure to support total war for years if necessary." Her supply network included converted passenger liners carrying ammunition, former luxury ships transporting fuel, and mining vessels hauling raw materials to frontline bases. Every aspect of human space transportation had been militarized. The alien coalition finally began to understand the magnitude of their mistake when human trade ships simply vanished from galactic commerce. Species that had depended on human cargo services found themselves stranded without supplies. The economic impact rippled across the galaxy. Planets that relied on human food shipments faced shortages. Worlds that imported human-manufactured goods found their supply chains broken. The Galactic Council realized that humanity represented a much larger portion of galactic civilization than anyone had calculated. Admiral Steve Harrison toured the growing fleet with a mixture of pride and determination. The ships gathered around. Earth represented more than military power. They represented the unified will of an entire species. "The aliens think we're driven by emotion," Harrison told his senior staff. "They're wrong. We're driven by principle. We believe that murdering innocent civilians should have consequences." The converted ships filled space around Earth's solar system like a metal forest. Cargo haulers bristled with missile launchers. Passenger liners had been transformed into troop carriers. Mining ships carried enough firepower to level planets. But the most impressive sight was the coordination. 500,000 ships moving with precision that amazed alien observers. The humans had created command and control systems that allowed unprecedented coordination of massive forces. Captain Davis received her final orders as the Iron Harvest prepared to leave Earth's system. Her ship would be part of the advance force that would engage the alien coalition. After months of preparation, the time for action had finally arrived. "Remember," Davis told her crew, "we're not conquerors. We're not seeking territory or slaves. We're seeking justice for 2 million murdered neighbors. That makes us the most dangerous enemy the galaxy has ever seen." As the massive human fleet prepared to move toward alien space, observers throughout the galaxy watched in fascination and terror. Never before had a single species mobilized so completely for war. The aliens had awakened something in humanity that they didn't understand. They had assumed that killing civilians would make humans afraid. Instead, it had made them angry. And angry humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, were the most dangerous force in known space. The industrial storm was complete. Now it was time for the reckoning. Fleet Admiral Ben Carter stood on the bridge of the flagship Vengeance and watched 500,000 human warships take formation for the largest military operation in galactic history. The sight filled him with grim satisfaction. After 18 months of preparation, humanity was ready to deliver justice. Carter had been chosen to command the Human Expeditionary Force because of his reputation for careful planning and decisive action. He was not a man who sought glory or conquest. He was a professional soldier who understood that his mission was to permanently end the threat to human civilians. "All fleet commanders report ready for hyperspace jump," announced Captain Lisa Rodriguez, his tactical officer. Rodriguez had been a mathematics professor before the war. Now she coordinated the movements of the largest military force ever assembled. The human fleet moved toward Zaphirian space with terrifying coordination. 500,000 ships operating as a single entity, supported by supply lines that stretched across dozens of star systems. No military force in galactic history had achieved such unity of command and purpose. Admiral Kelly Roberts commanded the first strike group, 50,000 ships tasked with breaking through Zaphirian border defenses. Her forces included converted cargo haulers, former passenger liners, and hastily armed mining vessels. They looked nothing like traditional warships, but they carried enough firepower to devastate planets. The aliens still don't understand what they're facing, Roberts told her staff as they approached the border system of Kessock Prime. They're expecting a traditional military engagement. Instead, they're facing an entire civilization at war. The Zaphirian defense fleet at Kessock Prime consisted of 2,000 ships commanded by Admiral Vex himself. The same alien who had ordered the destruction of New Eden Colony now faced the consequences of his actions. Admiral Vex had studied human military doctrine and concluded that the massive human fleet would attack in disorganized waves, driven by emotion rather than strategy. He positioned his forces to exploit what he assumed would be human recklessness. He was completely wrong. The human attack began with electronic warfare. Thousands of converted civilian ships equipped with powerful communication jamming systems surrounded the Zaphirian fleet and cut off all their communications. The aliens found themselves isolated and unable to coordinate their defense. Captain Rodriguez coordinated the assault from the Vengeance's bridge. The humans didn't charge forward in angry waves. Instead, they moved with mechanical precision, methodically identifying and targeting Zaphirian command ships. Target their flagship, Rodriguez ordered. Concentrate fire from assault groups 7 through 12. 6,000 human ships focused their weapons on Admiral Vex's command vessel. The concentrated firepower was overwhelming. The Zaphirian flagship exploded in seconds, taking with it the alien fleet's central command authority. The battle lasted 4 hours. It was not a heroic struggle between equals. It was a systematic dismantling of Zaphirian military power by vastly superior numbers operating with perfect coordination. When the last Zaphirian ship was destroyed, Admiral Roberts sent a message to all human forces. Kessock Prime is secure. Begin Phase 2 operations. Major Chris Lee led the special operations teams that followed the main assault. His mission was not conquest but documentation. The humans were building legal cases against war criminals while simultaneously prosecuting their military campaign. Lee's teams landed on Zaphirian worlds and began gathering evidence. They found military documents describing the planning for the New Eden massacre. They interviewed alien civilians who confirmed that the attack had been deliberately targeted at innocent humans. This wasn't a military operation, Lee reported to Admiral Carter. It was premeditated murder disguised as territorial enforcement. We have enough evidence to convict every alien involved in the planning. The systematic nature of the human investigation terrified the remaining coalition members. They realized that humanity wasn't seeking simple revenge. They were building a permanent legal framework to prevent future atrocities. Admiral Roberts led follow-up fleets that began the occupation of Zaphirian territory. The humans didn't seek to rule alien worlds. Instead, they methodically dismantled every aspect of Zaphirian military capability. Weapons factories were destroyed or converted to civilian production. Military academies were closed and their instructors arrested as war criminals. Warship construction facilities were reduced to scrap metal. The Zaphirian government tried to negotiate, offering territorial concessions and financial compensation. Admiral Carter's response was simple. We don't want your territory or your money. We want justice for 2 million murdered humans. Captain Amy Davis and the crew of the Iron Harvest participated in the occupation of the Zaphirian industrial world of Terminus. They watched as human engineers systematically dismantled weapons production facilities that had operated for centuries. Look at this place, said her weapons officer, Bill Murphy, as they toured a former missile factory. They had the capacity to build thousands of weapons, but they chose to use them against innocent farmers. The speed and efficiency of human operations shocked alien observers throughout the galaxy. Within 6 months of the first battle, the Zaphirian Empire ceased to exist as a military power. Their fleets were destroyed, their weapons factories dismantled, and their military leaders under arrest. The other 3 coalition species watched in horror as humanity demonstrated that their industrial capacity could sustain total warfare indefinitely. The humans showed no signs of war fatigue or economic strain. If anything, their military machine was growing stronger. The Kepler Alliance, the second largest coalition member, sent surrender offers to Admiral Carter. Their representatives begged for mercy, claiming they had been forced to participate by Zaphirian threats. Carter's response was delivered to the entire galaxy. Surrender is not enough. Justice requires that those responsible for war crimes face trial. Those who refuse to surrender their war criminals will face the same fate as the Zaphirians. Dr. Rachel Murphy coordinated the logistics of occupying enemy territory while maintaining offensive operations. Her supply networks efficiently moved troops, supplies, and prisoners across vast distances. The humans proved they could fight and occupy simultaneously. The aliens assumed we would exhaust ourselves, Murphy reported to the Strategic Command. Instead, we're demonstrating that a properly organized industrial society can sustain multiple complex operations indefinitely. Commander Tony Garcia's intelligence teams intercepted desperate communications between the remaining coalition members. The aliens were trying to understand how humans could maintain such massive military operations without economic collapse. They still don't understand our society, Garcia explained to Admiral Carter. They think in terms of military castes and civilian populations. They can't comprehend a civilization where every citizen participates in the war effort. The psychological impact on enemy forces was devastating. Alien soldiers began surrendering rather than fighting. Entire worlds declared themselves neutral and expelled coalition military forces. As the human fleet moved deeper into enemy territory, they encountered something unexpected: alien civilian populations that welcomed them as liberators. Many species had suffered under Zaphirian military occupation and saw the humans as protectors rather than conquerors. Captain Rodriguez analyzed the strategic situation from the Vengeance's bridge. The coalition is collapsing faster than our most optimistic projections. Their military command structure is breaking down. Admiral Carter nodded grimly. Good. But we don't stop until every war criminal is in custody and every weapons facility is destroyed. The human fleet continued its advance through enemy space, leaving behind a trail of dismantled military installations and arrested war criminals. They were not just winning a war. They were reshaping the balance of power in the galaxy. The aliens had made the fatal mistake of assuming that humans were like other species. They had believed that killing civilians would terrorize humanity into submission. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant that was methodically destroying everything they had built. The reckoning had begun, and it would not end until justice was complete. President Helen Martinez stood before the newly constructed War Crimes Tribunal on New Earth Station, watching as the first group of alien war criminals was brought to trial. 2 years after the New Eden massacre, humanity had fundamentally changed. The galaxy's approach to justice and civilian protection. The massive space station had been built specifically for these trials. It orbited the rebuilt world of New Eden, serving as both courthouse and memorial to the 2 million murdered colonists. Representatives from hundreds of species observed the proceedings, understanding that galactic law was being rewritten. Judge Mary Anderson presided over the tribunal with calm authority. She had been a civilian lawyer before the war, specializing in international law. Now she was establishing legal precedents that would govern interstellar relations for generations. This tribunal exists because the previous system of galactic justice failed, Judge Anderson announced as the trials began. When civilians are murdered, the responsible parties must face consequences. Today, we establish that principle as fundamental galactic law. Admiral Paul Thompson oversaw the transformation of humanity's massive war fleet into a permanent peacekeeping force. The 500,000 ships that had brought justice to the galaxy now served as guardians of the new order. We're not occupying alien worlds, Thompson explained to his senior staff. We're ensuring that no species will again choose genocide over diplomacy. Our presence guarantees peace through demonstrated capability. The Human Colonial Defense Force was restructured around rapid response capabilities. Human colonies were now protected by fleets that could deploy overwhelming force within hours of any threat. The galaxy had learned that attacking human civilians would result in immediate and total retaliation. Captain Amy Davis commanded one of the new rapid response squadrons based near the former Zaphirian frontier. Her ship, the Iron Harvest, had been upgraded with the latest defensive systems. She and her crew remained ready to protect any threatened civilian population. "We've learned that peace isn't maintained by good intentions," Davis told new recruits during training. "Peace is maintained by making aggression too costly to consider." Ambassador John Mitchell negotiated humanity's new position in galactic politics from the reformed Galactic Council headquarters. The old council, which had failed to prevent the New Eden massacre, had been dissolved and replaced with a system that emphasized rapid response to threats against civilians. "The new council operates on human principles," Mitchell reported to President Martinez. "When civilians are threatened, action is immediate and decisive. The debate happens after the threat is eliminated." The surviving Zaphirian worlds had become protectorates under human oversight. Their populations were learning democratic governance while their former military leaders served lengthy prison sentences on New Earth Station. Governor Lisa Carter, the former New Eden administrator who had survived the massacre while visiting Earth, now oversaw the rehabilitation of Zaphirian society. Her work focused on teaching former enemies the value of civilian protection and peaceful dispute resolution. "These people lived under military dictatorship for centuries," Carter explained to a gathering of human and alien educators. "They're learning that strength comes from protecting the innocent, not from threatening them." The other coalition species had integrated into the new galactic order with varying degrees of enthusiasm. The Kepler Alliance had embraced human-led reforms and become strong allies. The Rigel Federation remained suspicious, but cooperative. The Vega Confederacy required ongoing monitoring to prevent backsliding into militarism. Engineer Sam Watson continued developing defensive technologies at research facilities throughout human space. His latest innovations included early warning systems that could detect military buildups and automated defense platforms that protected vulnerable colonies. "We're not trying to dominate the galaxy," Watson explained to a conference of alien engineers. "We're trying to make aggression against civilians impossible. Any species that threatens innocent people will face overwhelming defensive response." The economic transformation of human space had proven permanent. The industrial capacity developed during the war continued to operate, producing defensive equipment and civilian goods for allies throughout the galaxy. Director Ryan Clark now managed peaceful industrial projects, but the capacity for rapid military mobilization remained intact. Human society had learned that eternal vigilance was the price of peace. "We maintain the ability to respond to any threat," Clark told visiting alien delegators. "But we prefer to use our capabilities for construction rather than destruction." Dr. Rachel Murphy had established the Galactic Logistics Institute, teaching other species how to organize large-scale operations efficiently. Her work helped former enemies rebuild their societies along peaceful lines while ensuring they couldn't threaten others. "Organization and efficiency aren't just military tools," Murphy explained to her students. "They're the foundation of any successful civilization. We're teaching the galaxy how to build rather than destroy." The war crimes trials continued for 3 years, establishing comprehensive legal precedents for protecting civilian populations. The proceedings were broadcast throughout the galaxy, ensuring that every species understood the new standards for civilized behavior. Colonel Nick Johnson's Marines had evolved into the Galactic Peacekeeping Corps, with representatives from dozens of species serving under human command. Their mission was to prevent conflicts before they required military intervention. "We learned that preventing war is better than winning war," Johnson explained to graduating peacekeepers. "Our job is to identify problems before they become tragedies." Major Chris Lee led investigative teams that continued documenting evidence of war crimes and helping rebuild damaged societies. His work ensured that the lessons of the war would never be forgotten. Commander Tony Garcia's intelligence division had become the Galactic Early Warning System, monitoring communications throughout known space for signs of developing threats. To civilian populations. Information prevents tragedies, Garcia told his analysts. We watch for signs of aggression so the galaxy can respond before innocents are harmed. Captain Lisa Rodriguez served as director of the Galactic Naval Academy, where officers from hundreds of species learned human principles of military organization and civilian protection. Military power exists to protect the innocent, Rodriguez taught her students. Any use of force that targets civilians is criminal, regardless of political justification. 5 years after the New Eden massacre, President Martinez visited the rebuilt colony during the annual memorial ceremony. The new settlement was larger and more beautiful than before, home to families from dozens of species who had chosen to live under human protection. Children of multiple species played in parks, where the original colonists had once farmed. Schools taught the history of the massacre and the war that followed, ensuring that future generations would understand the importance of protecting innocent life. The galaxy has learned that some principles are worth fighting for, Martinez told the assembled crowd. The protection of innocent life is the foundation of civilization. We will never again allow that foundation to be attacked. The memorial wall listed the names of all 2 million murdered colonists, but it also listed the names of the human and alien personnel who had died bringing justice to their killers. The wall served as a reminder that peace required sacrifice from those willing to defend it. Admiral Carter, now retired, lived on New Eden with his family. He worked as a teacher, helping young people from across the galaxy understand the importance of civilian protection and peaceful conflict resolution. We didn't fight for conquest, Carter told his students. We fought for justice. The difference is important. Conquest creates enemies. Justice creates peace. The galaxy had achieved unprecedented stability under the new order. The 500,000 ship human fleet continued to patrol known space, ensuring that no species would again choose genocide over diplomacy. Trade flourished between species that had once been enemies. Scientific cooperation replaced military competition. The resources once spent on weapons were redirected toward exploration, education, and improving life for civilians throughout the galaxy. But most importantly, the galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their capacity for violence. It was their unwillingness to accept injustice. When faced with the murder of innocents, humans had proven they would sacrifice everything to ensure it never happened again. The new generation of children playing in the rebuilt fields of New Eden represented the future the galaxy was building, together. A future where civilians were protected, where justice was swift, and where peace was maintained not by hope, but by the demonstrated capability to defend the innocent. The sleeping giant had awakened, delivered justice, and chosen to use its strength to protect rather than dominate. The galaxy was better for it.